The sky over the San Bernardino foothills burned like an open wound-deep orange, bleeding into furious red. Smoke coiled through the canyon, alive and ravenous, devouring everything in its reach. It sounded like a freight train that never stopped coming. Daniel Reed could barely see 20 feet ahead. His visor was streaked with sweat and ash, his chest tight despite the respirator sealed to his face. Radio chatter crackled in his ear, voices sharp, clipped, fighting panic with protocol. Charlie team, hold that western flank. Foam up structure 6. Winds shifting copy, at shifting hard. The hose in Daniel's grip bucked like an angry snake as the pressure surged, then faltered. His team was spread thin, protecting a handful of hillside homes that looked like toys abandoned before a storm. And then something cut through the chaos. Not a voice, not the roar of fire or the groan of collapsing timber. A sound smaller, fragile, desperate. A cry. Daniel turned. Through the haze, he saw it, a fawn, trembling in the gray brush, its legs folding beneath it. Too young to understand, too terrified to move. Around it, the fire drew a perfect circle, flames rising like walls, closing in fast. Reed! Hold the line. Someone shouted through the radio. But Daniel was already running. The hose slipped from his hands, water spraying wild over the scorched ground. His boots struck the dirt, heat bleeding through the soles. The others' voices blurred into static as he plunged into the smoke. Someone screamed his name once, twice, then nothing. For a heartbeat, they thought he was gone. Until Daniel emerged, coughing, eyes streaming, cradling the fawn against his chest. Have you ever watched an ordinary moment turn into something unforgettable? Share it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories like this one.
Mornings at Station 47 always started the same. Too early, too loud, and fueled by coffee strong enough to melt steel. The kind of place where sarcasm counted as affection, and laughter was how you kept the dark at bay. Daniel Reed was tightening the straps on his SCBA when Jimmy Torres walked by, cradling a steaming mug that smelled like chemical warfare. "You'd think after 10 years of this job," Daniel said, not looking up, "I'd stop smelling like smoke, like maybe my body would just give up and call it my new natural scent." "That's not smoke," Jimmy shot back. "That's olfactory fatigue, also known as your wife's biggest regret." Daniel grinned. "She married me after I became a firefighter. She knew what she was signing up for." It was the kind of back and forth that came easy after years in line. Familiar, grounding, the rhythm of people who trusted each other with their lives. Daniel straightened, rolling his shoulders. 36, a decade in, and his body was starting to file complaints. Knees that popped, a shoulder that remembered the roof collapse at 22 like a bad dream that never left. He passed the station mascot, Hank, a three-legged rescue mutt who'd survived the fire long before Daniel joined. Hank looked up, tail thumping. Daniel scratched behind his ear. "You got the right idea, buddy," he said softly. "Stay where it's safe." In the break room, Captain Maria Vasquez was hunched over her tablet, wildfire maps glowing red and angry. She didn't glance up when he entered. "Biggest fire of the season," she said. "Maybe the decade. 8% humidity, shifting winds, and half a dozen neighborhoods trying to fight it with garden hoses." Daniel poured coffee. "So, just another Tuesday, huh?" That earned him a look. Not fear, exactly. More like quiet calculation. The look of someone who'd seen too many near misses. "Stay sharp, Reed," she said. "I want everyone coming home tonight." Daniel nodded, hesitated. You know what keeps me steady out there? The little things. Family photos on the mantle, a kid's drawing in the fridge, a dog bowl by the door. That's what we're really saving. Maria's voice softened. Just make sure you live to save them. Daniel smiled. No promises. He didn't know then how close he'd come to breaking that one. By noon, the fire had stopped pretending to be something men could control. What started as a routine brush fire had turned into a monster. The Santa Ana winds flipped without warning, driving flames across the canyon like a living thing unleashed. Trees that had stood for centuries vanished in seconds. Smoke climbed into the sky, spawning its own storm, embers raining miles ahead to ignite new fronts. Daniel Reed's crew held the western perimeter, fighting to save a handful of homes clinging to the ridge. Even through his gear, the heat clawed at him, the air biting his skin raw. His gloves were caked with sweat and ash. The pain in his hands was long gone. Only fire remained. Every breath was a punishment. Smoke forced its way past the respirator, searing his lungs, leaving a taste like metal and ash. Around him, shadows moved in the haze, his team, half seen through the waves of orange light and drifting soot. They didn't talk anymore. 6 hours on the line stripped language down to grunts and gestures. Water pressure dropped, radios crackled. Someone coughed until they gagged, then went back to work. Training was long gone. What kept them standing now was pure will. "Reed, southern corner." Captain Vasquez's voice tore through the radio. "Embers are jumping the break." Daniel turned, dragging the hose with Jimmy Torres at his side. They pivoted together, practiced rhythm, blasting short bursts at the new spot fires that flared to life like deadly sparks in dry grass. Overhead, helicopters carved slow circles around the smoke, their water drops hissing as they hit the flames. It wasn't enough. It never was. Fighting this fire felt like trying to punch back a hurricane. And then, through it all, Daniel heard it. A sound, small. At first, he thought it was the wind, a high whimpering note carried on the shifting currents. Then it came again, higher this time, sharper. A cry. He froze. For a heartbeat, he thought exhaustion had finally broken something in him. 6 hours in heat like this could make anyone hallucinate. He'd known guys who swore they'd heard voices, dead parents, old friends, anything their brain could use to survive the noise. But this sound cut through the chaos with too much life to be imagined. Daniel scanned the smoke. Through a thin break in the haze, 40, maybe 50 yards away, something moved. Small, fragile, four-legged. A fawn. It stumbled through the ashen brush, legs trembling, body streaked black with soot, still spotted, still baby soft. It looked impossibly out of place here. Something innocent dropped in the middle of hell. Around it, the fire closed in from three sides, perfect ring of orange tightening by the second. Daniel watched it stumble and fall, then struggle upright again. It cried out, one desperate bleeding bleat, and that sound punched straight to the roar of fire, the shouting, the thundering wind. "Reed!" Jimmy's gloved hand clamps on the shoulder. "What are you doing? Hold the line!" Daniel didn't answer. He couldn't. The fire was 30 seconds from swallowing that clearing whole. 30 seconds until the world lost one more small, beautiful thing it didn't need to lose. "Dan, focus!" Jimmy shouted. "We'll lose the flank." Training pounded in his head. Hold formation. Protect the structure. Stay alive. Don't break off. Don't make it personal. They drilled it into you from day one. You can save everything. You try to save the unsavable and you end up a statistic. But Daniel wasn't thinking like a firefighter anymore. He was thinking like a father. And in that smoking fire, he saw not a fawn, but Sophie, his 7-year-old with a chipped front tooth and a heart too soft for this world. The girl who buried dead butterflies and cried when he missed bedtime calls. The one who believed her dad was a hero because he saved things, because he cared. And what would he tell her if he came home tonight knowing he'd stood by and watched something helpless burn? The fire growled, rolling forward with the sound of breaking trees. The fawn stumbled again, sides heaving. Jimmy's voice came through the mask, raw with disbelief. Daniel, don't. You'll never make it. Daniel's pulse hammered. Every instinct screamed to stay put. Every rule said, don't be stupid. But sometimes, stupid was the only thing that made sense. He didn't think. Thinking would have stopped him. Daniel dropped the hose. Behind him, Jimmy shouted something. His name. Maybe, but the sound vanished into the fire's roar. There was no more room in his head for reason, for orders, for protocol. Just the image of that small trembling shape trapped in a ring of flame. And then he ran, straight into the smoke, straight into the kind of decision that ends careers or lives, or sometimes defines exactly who you are when nothing else is left. The heat hit him like a solid wall. Even through turnout gear, it punched through, shoving against his chest, clawing up through his boots. Every breath tasted like acid. Embers spun through the air, tiny, burning stars that clung to his helmet and gloves. He could smell his own gear cooking, the faint rubber stink of melting souls. The world narrowed to a tunnel of orange and gray. Smoke filled it so thick it became a substance, heavy as water, pressing in on every side. His respirator rasped with each inhale. His eyes watered behind his visor until the world blurred to streaks of color and light. Every instinct screamed to turn back. Every cell in his body said, "You don't belong here. You can't win this." But through the choking haze, he saw it. The fawn. It spun in panicked circles, hooves slipping on the scorched ground. There was nowhere to go. The ring had closed, flames folding inward, eating the oxygen from the air. Daniel raised one gloved hand. "Hey," he called out, voice hoarse. "Hey, it's okay. I've got you, buddy." The animal didn't understand, of course. It bolted towards the nearest gap and straight for a burning patch of brush. Daniel lunged. His hands closed around its middle just as the flames whooshed up, devouring the space it would have run into. He yanked it back, clutching it tight against his chest. The fawn thrashed wildly, hooves cracking against his ribs and visor. Each kick landed like a hammer. I know, I'm sorry," Daniel gasped, struggling to keep hold. "But we're getting out, okay? You just gotta trust me." It was nonsense. The kind of thing you say when you're not talking to reason but to fear itself. And then the fire surged. A gust slammed through the canyon, and the flames leaped forward, sealing off the narrow gap Daniel had come through. It was like a door slamming shut behind him. The world went white hot. The air turned to something alive and angry. His gear started to smoke. The heat soaked through his skin. His breath came in shallow gasps. The radio at his shoulder exploded with voices. "Where's Reed? Can anyone see him? Jesus Christ, we've lost him in the smoke. Negative, do not enter, repeat. Do not enter, it's too hot. He wanted to answer. He couldn't. His throat felt scorched, his tongue thick with soot. Every ounce of focus went to the tiny trembling heartbeat fluttering against his chest. The fawn had gone still now, shivering but quiet. Head pressed against him like it somehow understood this human was all it had left. Daniel turned in a slow circle, searching for directions, for shape, for anything that didn't burn. But everything looked the same. Smoke, fire, red light, shifting shadows. No up or down, no escape. You did it now, he thought. You really did it. This is how they'll find you, charred, holding something you couldn't save. Then, through the madness, he saw it. A break in the smoke. Not much, just a thinning gray patch maybe 10 yards away, where the color shifted from orange to dull yellow. Lower smoke, less flame. Maybe a way out. Maybe. He didn't hesitate, he ran. He'd run through countless emergencies, collapsing roofs, exploding cars, backdrafts, but never like this. Never with another heartbeat tucked beneath his chin. The fire chased him like a living thing, roaring in his ears. Embers rained from above, stinging his neck where the gear didn't seal. His body screamed for oxygen. His lungs felt like they'd been scraped raw. 10 yards. 8. 6. A burning branch fell across his path. He didn't stop. He jumped, clearing it by inches. The fawn's body tight against his. 4. 3. The flames at his back surged again, heat licking at his calves. He could hear fabric popping, the sound of plastic blistering. His muscles were falling, but momentum carried him forward. Pure instinct, pure defiance. 2 yards, and then light. He burst through the smoke line like a drowning man breaking the surface. The sudden drop in temperature hit like a shock. The air still burned, but he could breathe it. Shapes appeared. His crew, silhouettes through the haze, frozen mid-motion. Daniel stumbled, dropped to one knee, still clutching the fawn. His arms were shaking violently. Every breath came as ragged cough. The little creature's chest heaved, its heartbeat hammered against his palm, impossibly fast. Daniel could feel its ribs, thin, bird-like, flutter beneath his gloves. He looked up. 20 yards away, his crew stared back. Jimmy, Vasquez, Rodriguez, all of them eyes wide behind masks. No one spoke. No one spoke. Even the radios went silent, like the fire itself was holding its breath. Daniel's vision blurred. Sweat and soot streaked down his face, stinging his eyes. He couldn't tell if he was laughing or choking when he rasped, "We made it!" For a moment, nobody moved. Then Jimmy took a step forward, voice low, half whispered. He'd just risked his life for that? The word hung there, not accusation, just disbelief. Captain Vasquez reached him first. She grabbed Daniel by the shoulder, hard enough to make him stumble. Her face a storm of soot, anger, and raw relief. "You son of a... Are you hurt? Can you breathe?" Daniel tried to answer, coughing through the taste of ash. He was still holding the fawn, its small body trembling against his chest. Up close, away from the inferno, he could finally see how young it really was. The white spots on its back were still bright, its eyes wide and black, fixed on his face, not trusting, but not fighting anymore either. I'm fine, he rasped, breath catching. The fawn, it needs water. Maybe a vet. Vasquez stared at him, like she couldn't decide whether to hug him or throw him back into the fire. A vet? She snapped. Reed, you just broke every rule we have. You left your post, abandoned your crew, and ran blind to open flame for an animal? Cap, Jimmy's voice got through hers. It wasn't loud, but it carried something different this time. Something quiet and heavy. Look around. Vasquez hesitated, then turned. Daniel followed her gaze. The crew had slowed, not stopped. They never stopped. But something in the air had shifted. The exhaustion that had weighed on every movement, the doubt that had crept in during the worst hours had lifted. The rookie, Rodriguez, the one who'd nearly broken earlier, stood straighter now. His eyes locked on Daniel. The other crews down the line were glancing their way too. Even the men from Engine 23, who'd been ready to pull back minutes ago, were back at it, hoses braced, shoulders squared. Something had changed. It wasn't something you could measure. It wasn't even something you could name, but it was real. Jimmy gestured towards Daniel. We just watched him run through hell, he said quietly. For something that small, for something that helpless. If he can do that, he didn't need to finish. The meaning was clear. If Daniel could do that, then they could fight a little longer. They could dig their heels in and hold the line, not just for homes or fences or acreage, but for life itself, no matter how fragile. Vasquez stood still for a long moment, the firelight flickering across her face. Then she exhaled, keyed her radio, and spoke. This is Captain Vasquez. We need animal control or wildlife rescue at our position. Injured fawn, immediate care. When she looked back at Daniel, her expression had softened. And Reed, she said, when this is over, you and I are going to have a very long talk about the difference between heroism and stupidity. Daniel managed a weak grin. Yes, ma'am. A paramedic appeared with a blanket, and together they eased the fawn out of Daniel's arms. It let out a tiny cry, looking back at him as if asking, Are you sure? You're safe, Daniel whispered, voice rough. You're safe now. The paramedic nodded and carried it towards the waiting truck. The next 6 hours blurred into single unbroken motion. The fire didn't surrender easily, it never did, but something in the crew had shifted for good. Orders came sharper, movements were cleaner. Every man and woman on that line fought harder, dug deeper, believed more. Whenever someone faltered, all they had to do was glance at Daniel. Blackened gear, cracked gloves, still out there with them, and they found another ounce of strength. By the time the sun sank low and the sky turned orange through the smoke, they had stopped the fire's advance. The ridge held. The homes below were safe. Not a single civilian casualty. And somewhere behind the lines, a small fawn was lying in a rescue tent, its leg bandaged, breathing steady, alive. It was a news photographer who caught the moment that would outlive the fire. Daniel didn't even know he was being photographed. He was sitting on the bumper of Engine 47, helmet off, face streaked with soot, drinking what was probably the best bottle of water in his life. The photographer had been moving through the camp, looking for something that told the story of the day, the exhaustion, the cost, the reason. He found it when Daniel looked up. A wildlife truck was idling nearby, the fawn inside a transport crate. Through the mesh, its dark eyes blinked once, meeting Daniel's. He didn't smile, didn't pose. He just watched it go. His face unreadable except for the smallest flicker of peace. Like after everything, something inside him had finally gone quiet. The shutter clicked. That photo would run on 6 front pages by morning. It would flood social media, be painted, shared, captioned, and turned into a symbol. But Daniel didn't know any of that yet. All he knew was that his crew was safe, the fire was contained, and that small life he'd carried through smoke and flame was still breathing somewhere out there. Vasquez passed by him as he sat there, heading towards the command tent. She paused just long enough to rest a hand on his shoulder. "Hell of a day, Reed," she said softly. "You did well." He nodded, too tired to reply. Jimmy dropped down beside him, handing over a protein bar. "You realize that picture's probably going to be everywhere tomorrow, right?" he said. "The guy who ran through a fire for a fawn. They love that one." Daniel cracked a tired smile, unwrapping the bar without looking up. "Doesn't matter." "No?" He shook his head. "I didn't do it for the photo. I just couldn't let it die there. Not when I could do something about it." Jimmy watched him for a second, then smiled faintly. "Guess that's the job, huh?" Daniel looked out at the blackened horizon. Smoke still rose in thin ribbons, glowing faintly until the red wash of sunset. The air smelled of ash and pine victory. "Yeah," he said quietly, "that's the job." The wildlife truck disappeared down the dirt road ahead, its red lights fading through the haze. Daniel followed it until it vanished completely. And for the first time that day, he let himself breathe, really breathe. The fire had taken so much, but somehow, in all that destruction, something worth saving had survived. And that, he thought, was enough. The fire was fully contained 3 days later. By then, the story had spread far beyond the burn zone. It wasn't just another headline about courage and under pressure. It was something people felt. Maybe because everyone could picture themselves in that moment. Seeing something small, something helpless, and having to choose between the safe thing and the right thing. Maybe because, in a world that felt colder by the day, they needed proof that compassion could still burn hotter than fire. 2 weeks later, the town held a thank you gathering for the crews who'd saved their homes. The smell of barbecue hung in the parking lot of the community center. Kids darted between folding tables, laughter cutting through the sound of generators and country music from a borrowed speaker. Daniel hadn't wanted to come. Attention made him itch. He told Vasquez he'd rather clean every hose in the county than stand around while people call him hero. "You're showing up," she told him flatly. "You became the face of this thing. Whether you like it or not, people need to thank you. So stand there and take it." So he came. Jeans, department shirt, nothing fancy. He tried to disappear among the other firefighters, men and women who'd fought the same fight, breathed the same smoke, and hadn't happened to be caught on camera when they did something brave. He was halfway through a lukewarm burger when a little girl approached, maybe 8, maybe 9. Braids, missing front tooth, clutching something wrapped in bright paper. "Are you the firefighter?" she asked. "The one who saved that baby deer?" Daniel smiled and knelt to her level. "I'm one of a lot of firefighters who helped that day." "But you saved her," the girl insisted. "My mom showed me the picture. You went into the fire." Daniel hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, I guess I did. The girl thrust the package into his hands. This is for your daughter. Inside was a small stuffed deer. White spots, stitched eyes, soft enough to sleep with. My mom said your daughter should have it, the girl explained, so she remembers her daddy's a hero. Something caught in Daniel's throat. He wrapped the toy back up carefully, like it might break. Thank you, she's going to love it. The girl grinned and ran off, her mom mouthing thank you from across the lot. Later, as the crowd thinned and the sun dipped behind the foothills, Rodriguez found him. The rookie looked different now, less jittery, more grounded. I was gonna quit, he said, before the fire. I was tired of being scared all the time. Thought maybe I wasn't built for this. Daniel listened quietly. But then I saw you run through that wall of fire for a fawn, and I realized this job's not just about putting flames out. It's about saving what can be saved, big or small. That day reminded me why it matters, so I'm staying. Daniel smiled faintly, glad to hear it. Rodriguez nodded once, walked away, leaving Daniel with the quiet weight of what that meant. Jimmy walked over with two sodas, handing one to Daniel. You didn't just give one kid something to believe in, he said, nodding towards a crowd of laughing children. You gave all of them hope. Daniel shook his head. I just did what anyone would have done. Jimmy smiled faintly. No, you did what everyone wishes they would have done. That's different. That night, when Daniel got home, Sophie was still awake. She launched herself into his arms, hugging him like she could keep him from ever leaving again. Daddy, did you really save the baby deer? Daniel laughed. Who told you that? Everyone. My teacher showed us a picture. You're famous. Famous, huh? That's new. He smiled. Yeah, I helped the baby deer. But not because I'm a hero, because it was the right thing to do. He handed her the wrapped gift. Someone gave me this for you. Sophie tore it open and gasped. She's beautiful. She hugged the toy tight. I'm naming her Hope. Daniel blinked, throat tightening again. Yeah, he whispered. That's a good name. Later, he stood at her doorway, watching her sleep with Hope tucked under her arm. Claire appeared beside him, eyes soft in the dim light. You scared me, she murmured. I scared myself, he admitted. But I'm proud of you, she said. Sophie's proud too. She told me she wants to save things when she grows up, just like her dad. Daniel looked at the toy deer on the nightstand, its stitched eyes glinting under the glow of the night light. Maybe that's what matters most, he said quietly, that she learns not to look away. Weeks later, a wildlife rehab worker sent a photo. The fawn, healed, sprinting towards the trees, sunlight catching its new coat. Daniel printed it and pinned it above his desk at the station, right beside a picture of Sophie hugging her toy. On bad days, when the smoke felt endless and the losses piled too high, he'd look at these two images and remember why they fought the fires in the first place. Not just to stop destruction, but to protect what still had a chance. The world would forget the story eventually. The photo would fade. The fire would become a line in a report. But the ripples would stay. The rookie who didn't quit. The child who learned what hope looked like. The daughter who grew up believing her father ran into a fire not for glory, but for love. And maybe that's the real legacy. not headlines or medals, but proof that compassion can still survive the flames and that sometimes the smallest lives leaves the biggest mark. Everyday heroes are all around us.